In the name of God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I greet you as a chaplain and myself, and as a member of the Christian faith, but one who has worked in interfaith and multi-faith settings for basically my whole time in ordained ministry. My name is Dave Benke. I'm the bishop or president of the Atlantic District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is a Lutheran group in this country, representing about 2.5 million people. I'm a parish pastor about 5 miles from Kennedy Airport in a place called in Brooklyn. And I have been affiliated with Kennedy Airport and its chaplaincy for about 30 years. And have served on the board of the Council of Churches, City of New York, which is supervising the Protestant chapel at Kennedy. And that means supervising the young man there giving away all that wine. He owes me a bottle, therefore. And I'd like to just lead this reflection by saying that as wonderful as your ministry is, and as challenging as it can be, it always calls you to walk toward the difficulty, walk toward the reality, walk toward the anxiety, and walk into the flames that may exist on planet Earth, in the place that you're called to be, which is in the airport community. In that sense, I've always felt that for those of us who are spiritually connected and motivated, we need to be on the ground and ready to go, no matter what the situation. And I know that that's your calling. I know that's the call you have yourselves. And it's not an easy one. We don't sit behind the desk and wait for the action to come for us. We walk toward it. And is that not true? You want to be that person. And that's why you have been selected or chose this line of work in the airports and in the airport chaplaincy. So on September 11th, and I'll just tell my little story and then we'll have plenty of time, I hope, for conversation. On September 11th, and the place that was hit the most was right there at Ground Zero. That was just annihilated and obliterated. And when it happened on that day, I received information right away at 8:47. Somebody called me and said a plane has hit the building. I was in my office in Westchester. And I had just invented the theme for our diocese, which was going to be engaging the world with the gospel of hope. I had just come up with that, printed it out. And within a half an hour, the world had engaged us with terror. That's all I can say. And I thought it was a little plane. I'm the same guy. I thought it was a little plane, thought it was nothing. And then we found out immediately what it was. And I was called by there were two Lutheran groups and 2 bishops, so we talked to one another right away. And I was sent back to Queens and Brooklyn to do my work on the ground there. Went over, I was the last person over the bridge. It's called the Throgs Neck Bridge. And I stopped the car in the middle of the bridge and looked out and saw the smoke from those buildings coming toward me. What is important for your group to know is that as much as what happened down there had to do with that space of land, 10010, that zip code, the other community, well, first of all, it was operated by the Port Authority of New York. And the Port Authority is the place that runs the airports. And so the officers who were killed down there were officers who were well acquainted with Kennedy, LaGuardia, Newark, and all the airports around there. The 84 people that were killed from the Port Authority were all people who were well known in the whole airport and airline community. It's one big family. But the second community that was impacted as much as any community, including the FDNY, Fire Department of New York, was the airline, the airport. Because the instruments of terror were airplanes. And those planes were taken into the air, filled with fuel, to set that fire at the World Trade Center. I took a tour the week afterwards with the FBI, a special tour, And they told us that the flames and the top floors of the World Trade Center were at 2,600 degrees. That was the quality of that fire, 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Cremation takes place at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that meant that the 12 or 1,300 people who no body parts were found of those people would never be found. They became part of the air. They were vaporized, they were eliminated. And so the smoke that came down, and I kept a little urn, a little vial of the ashes from ground zero. In that smoke and ash is human remains. Microscopic human remains, so that everyone who went through that was involved, in a sense, in a crematorium. They were feeling human beings coming down upon them. That's the level of this. But the airline community was immediately and irreversibly affected. And the chaplains out there, myself as a member of the board, were actively involved in all kinds of ongoing memorial services, special gatherings, and just dealing with people. You know, a lot of you are of that age that you must have been around at that time and involved maybe in going to an airport. Nobody wanted to go to an airport, nobody wanted to get in a plane. Anybody that got in a plane felt it was the next one that was going to be used, and people were profiling on the ground, people were profiling everybody that they saw. And as soon as you looked at somebody and they looked different from you, you said, that's probably a terrorist, they're probably going to take us out. And so there was all that ongoing anxiety every day for spiritual ministry, right? Romeo can tell, anybody who was here at the time will tell you, if you put on anything connected to a religious outfit, you were going to get stopped down the street and people would say, can you just pray for me right now? And people would literally just drop to their knees in the middle of the street and say, oh, please offer a prayer. I don't know if I can get from here to the corner. There's that level of anxiety at a time of destruction. Those of you that have been through other wars and other battles and other things in your countries or areas of origin can feel that same thing. That people's level of distress is just at the highest possible human level. So, where do we put ourselves? In the airport there was a hotel which is being redone now as the Ramada, and the Ramada was the place where any time there was an air disaster, the trauma center for all of that, and the gathering place for all the victim families or all of the affected families was right there. And we had several services there for the Port Authority, for American Airlines, for United, and for all of the people that were connected who were working there. So imagine those places, imagine those services. Anytime people gathered together, a flight attendant, think of a flight attendant now, and the flight attendants were killed, the flight attendants were butchered, the flight attendants were eliminated. Those flight attendants were terrified, and yet they didn't want to lose their jobs, and the airlines weren't flying, people were being laid off, their friends were being affected. There was a whole, in other words, there's a spill-off here. It's not just what happened on September 11th, it's everything that took place the day after and going forward. So what began to happen is that we would gather in little knots, all of us who were spiritually chaplains or involved, and we would just start talking to people and debriefing and helping them get through that anxiety and get through that next step. From a perspective of my specific belief system, it didn't matter who you were talking to. You couldn't say, I'd like all the Lutherans to gather over here, you know, I'd like just to talk to Lutherans. Nobody cared about any of that. It was a human thing. It's a human being in distress, and it crossed religious lines at every intersection, and people just wanted to be listened to and held in confidence. In this city, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit in the interfaith intersection. In this city, there was a great, because we are in this metro area, because we are so global, right? There's a big Arab community down in Atlantic Avenue and all throughout Brooklyn. various Arab countries. There's a big Hasidic Jewish community in Brooklyn, ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox Jewish community, millions of Jewish people, hundreds of thousands of Muslims, Christians of all various flavors, all floating around loose, and a large Hindu population, people of Hinduism. So how do you think people were dealing with their religious differences at that time? See, there was a blame game going on, and it was headed right toward the Arab communities, and it was headed toward racial profiling, facial profiling, and all of those things. So what happened in that time frame, and does this happen at other airports around the world, or does everybody just go about their business? My hunch is this is happening in people's minds all the time. They're looking around and they're making determinations. So Mayor Giuliani, our mayor at that time, decided to hold a prayer service. And the whole purpose of holding this service, called Prayer for America, was to have all the leaders of the variety of faiths on the same stage at the same time praying for peace. So there were imams, there was a Sikh leader, there was Hindu leaders, and there were Protestant, Catholic, Jewish rabbis, priests, bishops, all of that stuff was in one place. I think that was the way to go. And I'm sure it was the way to go. Because after September 11th, let's ask this question. Did you hear about major religious conflagrations in New York City? Were people being beaten and killed because they were from Arab countries? Right? Did that happen? No, it did not happen. And I believe that that was because of the civic leadership of the mayor, who called us together to say, let's not do that. Let's not be that. Let's not let terrorism take over our city and infect us to the degree that we can't, in a global metropolitan area like this, continue to live our lives in peace. And so there were about 20 or 30 of us who were at that service, including me, and it was held at Yankee Stadium, which is a big stadium. You may have heard of the New York Yankees. I'm a Mets fan, so I was going to the wrong stadium. But thankfully tonight the Mets are in the playoffs and the Yankees aren't. So
The Mets are from Queens.
The Mets are from Queens. I'm from Queens. The Mets are from Queens. Let's just get that out of the way. I'm going to get that out of the way. We don't need to go any further with that. Yeah, that's just life. I was overseas, by the way, and I just now last week, and I met a guy from London in Berlin, and he had all Mets uniform on. And I said, I didn't know anybody in London even knew what a baseball was, much less that it was the Mets. And he said, no, we got baseball leagues now over here, and football, American football. So there's a whole world out there I have to get used to, but I'm glad the guy was a Mets fan. Anyway, this service, to go back to the serious side of the aisle, was held at Yankee Stadium, and it was about 20,000 people in the stadium, huge security issues, and it was broadcast on CNN. And what the world saw was that one after another, we got up and gave our prayers to our respective groups, with our respective groups in mind, and simply prayed that God would allow us to continue to walk together as a human race and as representatives of our faith backgrounds in such a way that we honored the God of peace, the Prince of Peace, the God who calls us to live and walk in peace. And that's what happened. And it took place prayer after prayer after song, with all the famous people singing and all those things going on, that service. And what happened at the end of that was we resolved to go back to our ministries and just do our work. And then for some of us who were around here, we must have gone to 20, 30, many funerals. Funerals of victims from the upper floors. Funerals of firefighters. Funerals of police. Funerals of Port Authority employees. It didn't matter, again, we just were at those funerals, left and right. the guy who was the firefighter who was in charge of zip code 10010, the fire marshal for that zip code, happened to be Lutheran. And we had the service up at our college in Westchester with 1,000 or 1,500 people in attendance. And his son got up and he just said, you know, some of you think of heroes as being people who play sports. You think of heroes as people who have some kind of public, everybody knows who they are. They're heroic and they're celebrities. He said, my dad was not a celebrity. My dad just was doing his job. My dad knew, he said, the exact structure of that building, those buildings. He was a fire marshal. He had to know the inner structure of those buildings. And he knew that at a certain point the buildings were not built substantially enough to withstand that kind of heat and that kind of pressure. And the last video, the last audio tape rather, of anyone inside that building is of firefighters that they found. The last voice you hear is that man, Ron Bucco. So he said, my dad, when he went in the second time to the building, knew that he was not coming out. And yet he went in because there were people to be saved, there were lives to be dealt with. Well, you want to be spiritually that kind of person. You want to be the person who's willing to give up whatever it is that you have in this life for the sake of being there for others. And I think that's the call that we have. Now, I'll close with something from my life, and then we'll open it for dialogue. So what happened to me? What happened to me borders on the insane, but I gave that prayer at Yankee Stadium, right? It was a 1-2-minute prayer. It was a prayer for peace, and it ended just in Jesus' name. As a Christian, I would end the prayer in Jesus' name and left. And as soon as we got out of the stadium, I had a call from a friend of mine in California. He said, I just saw you on TV. And I said, oh, I thought this was on local TV. I thought this was a New York thing. He said, no, this was on CNN. This went all over the world. He said, so you're going to be in big trouble. And I said, I'm going to be in trouble and he said, for praying with people of other religions. And that's what happened to me. I was brought up on charges of heresy, Christian heresy, for participating by being in the same space as an imam, as a rabbi, as a priest. Because I'm Missouri Synod Lutheran, we don't hang out with anybody else. You know, we have the truth. We don't pray with you. I said, well, that can't be, because this can't be. I gave a simple Christian prayer as one person in a room full of people representing the planet Earth. The 9/11 was an equal opportunity destroyer. Many Muslims died, many Catholics died, many Jews died, many Christians died, and some Lutherans died. We were just there to represent. And the people who didn't like me that much felt that that was false, that I had committed heresy. And there were people of other religions who said the same thing about their, what I would say, ultra-conservative people, who said by appearing together at any time, we're giving a false witness, and we therefore are heretical. You shouldn't, no imam should stand there next to a Christian leader. No rabbi should stand next to an imam. None of that should happen. Can you imagine that? That's the way the world works, right? So anyway, and I think that's part of your ministry, is it not? Your work, I should say, in an airport community is to model a different reality. And that is that no matter I have an exclusive belief system, that doesn't mean I can't be involved with or praying with or hanging out with someone else. So my case went to court, church court, went to heresy trial, and I lost. So I was a convicted heretic, which is a good thing to be in a certain sense. Thank you. No state, they didn't have a state. Joan of Arc was not there, there was no state, there was none of that. But I had an appeal, so I could appeal my heresy. I could appeal my charge of being convicted as a heretic. And upon appeal, the heresy trial was actually held at the Newark airport. Who knew? They hold the trial at the Newark airport. And at the end of the trial, I said, look, if you convict me, if you uphold the conviction, I will be there, and I could point to what used to be the World Trade Center. I said, because that's the call of God for me. If you release me, I will be there because that's the call of God for me. I'm going to be over there, whatever you do. That's it. And leave it alone. And it was in the hands of that little group, and they reversed the charge of heresy. So when I go around the world now, I say, I'm a heretic in recovery. This is recovering. Hi, my name is Dave. I'm a recovering heretic. And he goes, hi, Dave. 12-step program for heresy. And it taught me a lesson, a big-time lesson, and I hope it's applicable to you in your work. And that is, a lot of times people will be coming to you with their own presets. They have their own preset system going on. And if they have been brought up in a narrow environment, in an insulated environment, they're going to bring that to you. And you may hear this in your daily work, that you have people come into the airport and saying, pray against all those people over there because they're a different color, or they look evil, or whatever it is. And your job is simply to witness the all-inclusive love and mercy of God, is it not? That the mercy of God knows no bounds. And we cannot get ourselves trapped even into our denomination. Is this being taped? Is this turned? Yeah. We shouldn't. No, don't worry about it.
Try it again.
Yeah. As soon as we get ourselves trapped in that world, we're not going to talk to other people. We're not going to engage anybody. You're going to just walk away from people. And so I have used this opportunity in my own denomination to keep trying to widen the ability to engage. And I've told people that doesn't mean I won't get into trouble, because as soon as you put yourself in that place, somebody will attack you. You put your head above the line, and somebody will try to chop it off. But I think it's a worthwhile battle. It's a worthwhile hill. In this time in human existence, 7 billion of us trying to get along out here, and people obviously at war religiously and for other reasons around the world, using planes, using the same weapons, saying, no, we don't want anybody from that group to even touch us. No, we want to be separate. No, we don't want to, we want to know about that. And I will tell you my thing, and then we can open this up. My way of stating this is that to say we do not have exclusive beliefs is a lie. I have beliefs that are exclusively Christian. That's the truth of my belief. That's my belief system. It has an exclusive claim on truth. So I said, I don't know, and I was at many interfaith forums, including this one, and I used the words of Jesus from John, where he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes unto the Father but by me. I said, that's something that Jesus said. I can't deny that he said that. And I can't deny that I'm inside a faith tradition that has that belief, that Jesus said this. I said, but the way I articulate that is what's important. If I articulate that in an insulated and an arrogant and an insensitive and an authoritarian way, that doesn't allow anybody even to hear what I have to say, but they just say, well, okay, God bless you, get out, stay away. Then I have ruined it. So it's exclusive claims in an expansive way. There has to be a way for interfaith work, dialogue, and continuing interaction in this world, where the threat of violence hits us every day, every time you turn the street corner, in such a way that the religious folks, the folks who actually believe something, and that's us, we actually have a belief system, that we're able to engage across those belief systems in a way that is productive. So that my respect, and from I'm going to give you a Christian perspective, it's in 1 Peter, which just said, always be available, always be ready to give evidence of the hope that lies within you, but do so with gentleness and respect. That's what the Bible actually says, the New Testament says at that point. but do so with gentleness and respect. Otherwise, your testimony has no weight at all. And I can give evidence of the hope that lies within me across the line to Islam, across the line to Judaism, and across the line to Hinduism or any other Buddhism, whatever faith group it might be. But I must do so with respect. And if we can be the agents of respect and a kind of a, what I would say, a gentleness that invites other people, is also listening. Not just a talker, but a listener. And you know, most of us who are preachers, we're much better talkers than listeners. I'm trained to be a talker. I'm not trained that much to listen, but I've had to learn to listen and to hear what somebody genuinely is saying across that faith line. So I bring you that as what I think is a way to heal and a way for a healing community inside the airline ministry, inside the airports, and inside of all of what we do. So are there comments or questions you would like to make about September 11th, anything connected to that, about the anti-terrorism approaches at your own airports? I've just been through like 15 lines at Heathrow and went through U.S. Customs just 2 days ago, so I understand what that's all about. We have, and you're in the airport, and those in airports have work to do with customs agents, right? Or in this country, TSA, what we call TSA, the security systems guys, who can be they can get very cynical. They can get very hard-boiled from what they have to go through day by day. And they're looking at the downside. They're looking at the evil underground, some guy trying to smuggle this or that or the other thing in here. It isn't your call also to engage them. So, anyway, comments, questions, sure.
2 questions. What were you a heretic before?
Heretic and waiting, yes.
My question is, how much did the events and the way you engaged it changed your personal view of other faith and your role? And another question, which is more technical, that's how do you coordinate with the other faiths, or how do you organize? What was precisely the role of civil authority, mayor, or
Thank you. Those are 2 really, really good questions. And the first one is, how does this affect you? And you know, I think anytime you've been through a personal crisis, it's a moment of truth for your faith. Is it real, or is it just something you were going through the motions with? And I think I'm the same as the average human being. My faith was stronger, but it was really focused. In other words, I couldn't, for 2 years, because stuff happened in audio ways as well to me. We were around for another thing. I couldn't listen to the radio. I had a lot of prohibitions from my own psychological perspective. I couldn't listen to the radio. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't be in certain situations. The only thing I could listen to was Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace, that album. All of a sudden that became it for me. That was my heart of my spirituality, was some of the songs on that album. And one passage in the Bible, Psalm 27, verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? So boom, personally, all of a sudden, it was just what happens if you lost a spouse or a job, or something bad happened to you, is my personal focus became much deeper. And it was deep level. Prayer was just screaming out in the middle of the night. My wife was not happy with that, but you just, all of a sudden, you're just screaming out. And you had certain people, I had certain people that I really trusted with my inner stuff. The second thing was that I became a much better listener in interfaith categories. And I became aware that there are broad scales of difference inside of different faith traditions as well as my own. I knew my group was a little bit narrow. I wasn't sure it was that much, but they were a little bit narrow. But I found out that there were people on the same on that same spectrum across religious faiths. And so when I have gone to interfaith gatherings in places like this, I've always said it's about engaging with respect and gentleness and truly listening. So the thing I really learned that was of the most importance